Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about the recent trend of live-action rebooting all of the more famous and noteworthy classic animated movies, which in turn are usually based on older stories and source material, as you'll soon see. And more specifically, these live-action remakes have been coming from Disney left and right lately. They made 5 of them last year, and they also tend to have a number of controversies surrounding them too. Like just last week, we were talking about the upcoming live-action reboot coming later this month called Mulan. That film just had to cut out a character due to concerns about modern progressive-led trends surrounding the Me Too movement. And then before Mulan, we had those 5 different live-action reboots that came from Disney just in 2019, a number of which had their own SJW-leaning stories attached to them as well. Aladdin got flack for daring to write and cast a white character in it. In an Arabian-inspired movie, apparently that's a no-no according to the left. Then the Lion King remake got praised for its so-called diversity. In this case, diversity meaning less whites, of course, and more blacks and minorities, certainly. And then another announced and upcoming live-action remake is The Little Mermaid, who had a very interesting casting choice for its main character. Instead of going with the traditional location and casting people who look native to the story's country of origin, well, for The Little Mermaid, Disney decided blackwashing the main character would be a good choice. And gee, I wonder why Disney would break tradition here. Could it be related to the fact that The Little Mermaid was white and of European descent? And it's a tale inspired by Danish stories and folklore too. I mean, they sure didn't want to wash away their movie's identity when they made that Arabian-inspired Aladdin remake. Then the Lion King remake even went so far as to cast blacks and African people, despite it being a film about animated lions and other animals, of course. You don't even see those actors. Then there's the forthcoming Mulan, which, of course, stayed true and cast all Asians for its project. So with that in mind, it really makes you wonder why Disney would want to change The Little Mermaid after pretending to care about the backgrounds and cultures and authenticity and representation for so long. Now, I don't want to get too far off topic with that Disney live-action remake Little Mermaid stuff, but it really needed further explanation so you could see the trend going into today's news story. You see, the blackwashing of The Little Mermaid was actually only the beginning. Now another company, Sony, they have a similar live-action remake of Cinderella in the works. And get this, they're apparently going to blackwash Cinderella's fairy godmother, and they're going to brownwash the main character as well. More on that later, but back to the fairy godmother. Well, not only is she being blackwashed, but they're also making this new fairy an alphabet character as well. Can't wait to see this blow up in their faces eventually. A tweet from CBS has more details on it. It says, Billy Porter reveals he will play fairy godmother as genderless in upcoming Cinderella remake. Genderless, you say? Well, that sounds like a fancy way of saying you're a flamboyant man looking for even more attention. Nothing inherently wrong with attention seeking either. In fact, it's a common and sometimes encouraged trait, especially among performers like this. But it really does become annoying and a slight problem when it gets too obnoxious and in your face. For example, I don't know much about this Billy Porter guy other than I've seen him before a few times on television. This is the guy who famously came to the Academy Awards in a tuxedo dress thing last year, like in this picture. Then I remember him wearing this monstrosity to the Grammys or something this year. And that's basically all I knew about this guy up until now. He was that weird dress wearing dude. Didn't even know he was an actor, but apparently he's now playing this new alphabet fairy godmother, or fairy god person, I guess is what they'll maybe call it. Can't say I'm looking forward to this movie anymore now though. Actually, after this kind of announcement, most people will be less likely to see this movie. What a genius move this project's marketing team is making on this. They're using the same failed strategy that has sunk project after project year after year now. I mean, why would anyone in their right mind double down on this woke BS anyway? It really shows that this kind of work, it's not profit driven anymore. These don't always care about making money, not these days. Because if they did, they would care more about giving the people what we want to see. Instead though, they're shoving this social Marxist liberal propaganda down our throats, forcefully. Because the studios are more concerned with pushing political causes and having a message put out there, over doing their actual jobs, which should be entertaining us and giving the fans what we want to see. Next, let's turn to an article from fatherly.com with more details. It's called Fairy Godmother and Live Action Cinderella Remake Will Be Genderless, but it's not Disney. Yeah, it's not Disney, but Sony is following in their failed footsteps. And also, Cinderella is yet another animated and literary classic that's getting abused and stripped and remade and reconfigured into something almost unrecognizable, all being done by modern SJWs. It's heinous, and this is also highly hypocritical for them to do, since they of course complain if anything from another background gets changed in the slightest. We've even talked about them complaining how Aladdin had one speaking white character who wasn't even whitewashing any other characters. He was just there for story purposes, but the lefties wanted them out because, well, while they claim to be making choices for the good of the project and its background and authenticity and representation, but actually they're just trying to make things have less white people. Let's be real. That's why they're more than happy to black or brownwash our parts, like what they're doing with The Little Mermaid and now Cinderella too. Regardless of all that though, let's read on more into this story anyway and see where else this goes. Sony has started filming on its live-action remake of Cinderella, and it's not going to be like the 1950s Disney version. Due to release in 2021, details were slowly coming out about this new version, including a change to the fairy godmother's character, which is played by Billy Porter. The new adaptation is a classic fairy tale for a new generation and will be a genderless character. In the original film, the fairy godmother is a sweet older white lady with gray hair who helps transform Cinderella out of her torn up dress and into one fit for the royal ball. Porter is set to play this character in the remake, and they make the magic seem even more magical. It hit me when I was on the set last week how profound it is that I'm playing the fairy godmother. They call it the Fab G, Porter said to CBS News. Magic has no gender. Nice. Porter continues saying, "We are presenting this character as genderless. At least that's how I'm playing it, and it's really powerful." Is it though? Is it really powerful? Because I still just see this as attention seeking to the extreme now. Not to really insult all the so-called genderless alphabet people out there or anything. I'm sure there might be 4 or 5 or 6 of you in the world, one of whom might be watching, and I'll bet you have real struggles to deal with, surely. But really, this Billy Porter guy just looks like a gay dude trying to get extra special treatment by creating and claiming a new gender option. This wouldn't be too big a stretch either, considering it's basically a big trend in acting now. Claiming alphabet status is sure to get you gigs in Hollywood at this point. In fact, this Cinderella story we're going over today is really one big example of that. And also another similar story from last week supports this premise too. You might remember one of our previous videos about Supergirl, which went over its choice to cast a supporting alphabet-centered character and sidekick too, and now they have a new villain with that as well. Next, let's talk about the authenticity of things here. Or rather, let's talk about how inauthentic it is to cast this godmother as a dark black African man. Aside from the gender obviously being off and tearing the whole fairy godmother thing apart from the core, well, also, if we were being accurate and true to the stories and legends, like how SJWs pretend to be sometimes, well, that means this Cinderella cast would be mostly European descendant white people. The original Cinderella tale may have had widely varying origins, including one coming from Asia even, but mostly, for the most part, modern adaptations we've seen, they're coming from the European, French, or German fairy tale version of Cinderella, meaning if this new movie were going more along with tradition, the characters would be white, like the inspiring fairy tales. Now, to be fair, I do realize how absurd this can sound too, especially when we consider we're discussing the race and gender of a magical fairy who can turn mice into horses and a pumpkin into a carriage for a princess, which they made with magic too. But really, I'm just taking the standards of the social justice warriors and holding them up to them, and showing how ridiculous and hypocritical their baloney has become. With several other remakes and versions of the story already out there, this version with subtle but significant changes, such as Porter playing the fairy godmother, being an openly gay black man who often challenges the line of gender, is essential. That doesn't sound too subtle to me. I think the new generation is really ready. The kids are ready. It's the grown-ups that are slowing stuff down, he said. Sounds like he's concerned with influencing children. Sony's Cinderella reportedly started filming last month and was written by James Corden, who is also producing and starring in the movie. Others in the cast alongside Porter include Camila Cabello as Cinderella, Pierce Bronson as the king, and Idina Menzel playing Cinderella's stepmother. Cinderella is set to hit theaters in February 2021. Okay, wow, well, that's a lot to take in. Now, I think I could see where this BS is going though. James Corden wrote and directed this. That says a lot. He's that hefty British gentleman who hosts a late-night TV show now, apparently. But recently, he's become more famous for a trending segment of that show called Carpool Karaoke. And not to be a big party pooper or anything, because they're just having some simple fun in that segment, but also at the same time, Carpool Karaoke is just stupid. And it's just a silly segment where James is trying to get big names and celebrities to sing with him, while he pretends pretends to drive a car around. It's rather shallow and easy entertainment, but as I prefaced, it is mostly harmless, albeit a bit low IQ and sometimes nauseating. Regardless, we shouldn't be surprised this British bloke is going full SJW here with his Cinderella movie. The dude is from the leading regressive center of the world right now, London, England. In addition, Corden is one of the many late-night TV show hosts who act as propaganda surrogates for the Democratic Party here in America. Not only do they bash Trump night after night, but also they're real cozy with all the establishment leftists too, including Trump's former opponent, Hillary Clinton, who's appeared on James Corden's show a few times before. So, needless to say, we can see why this kind of woke project is coming from the likes of James C. But that doesn't make it any better or justified. It actually shows that James is just a typical leftist, and he supports and promotes their typical progressive, pro-minority alphabet nonsense. It's also worth mentioning that Cinderella is apparently going to be played by Camila Cabello now, a fine singer surely, but also not your typical and expected casting choice, especially for a white European character like Cindy. Again, not to sound like a purist or something, I'm not the one who's really obsessed with these races and casting choices. Really, I'm not trying to get more of my people into anything either. That's pretty cringe, but also, that's what the left-wingers would be doing and are doing currently, everywhere. So why can't we stand up and fight for the characters our respective race has established and portrayed for generations? Well, I think we can, and you do too, probably. But obviously, and the other trick here is, according to leftists, we're actually not allowed to defend ourselves. SJWs would call what I'm doing pro-white racism, because apparently it's racist to be pro-white anything, even though the same kind of behavior is allowed with literally every other color. In fact, it's encouraged even. Blacks are supposed to group with themselves and fight for their rights and placement in places. And they even champion ideas when they involve blackwashing characters, but for some reason, in this crazy world we're living in current year, the Democrats have made people who are white automatically racist. And then if you even try and speak up or defend yourself, or God forbid, acknowledge us or our accomplishments and our right to exist, well, that's automatically deemed racist, and you get called a 1940s German, a supremacist, and you name it. Pretty messed up and wrong and inaccurate, but that is the world we're living in today, in 2020. And it's a world we are trying to change here on the show No Bullshit, with our arguments and top-notch videos like the one you're watching right now. In the end, I think this kind of woke advertising definitely should be going to the wayside. Promoting your product by adding in a token alphabet minority, that's pretty much the most shallow and desperate thing I think the left can do at this point. And using your opportunity to make a Hollywood movie as a way to promote progressive, sometimes deviant lifestyles, well, that's never cool either. I predict many will stay home rather than paying the $20+ to see this new movie. Woke Cinderella, I'd rather watch paint dry, or maybe attend a Tyler Perry movie or something. Anything would be better than another live-action remake too. An equally played-out genre and premise that also, for the record, they've already made and interpreted the Cinderella story specifically dozens of times. So add to that the wokeness and propaganda pushing parts of this, and this tired and recycled and lazy premise, and the nature of all these things, and I think we can all see why a project like this is really going nowhere, except maybe straight to DVD and into the dollar bin at Walmart. What do you guys think? Are you excited to see Cinderella with a genderless fairy godmother? What even is genderless to begin with? Because all I see when I look at Billy Porter is a gay black dude. Comment your thoughts on all this below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.